Welcome to this week's Real Talk with Tia and Jill. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday. I was thinking about Wednesdays actually, because in our community, if you're a part of our community, which you should be, but if you are not, join us. But on Wednesdays, we talk about filling our soul, right? And I was just kind of thinking about Wednesdays is just mentally, because it's the middle of the week, it's a really great day to reset and think about, like, okay, how do I need to refresh my hello, can you hear
Hey,
me?
you know what? Mine says that we're not live right now. Does
Oh,
yours?
mine
I
says
want
we
to
are
check to see if we have people on the other end.
live. Mine says we are live.
Oh, because mine says that we're not.
Oh, we
So,
might be live on YouTube. So YouTube, give us a moment. Let's try to go live on LinkedIn. Here, I think I can.
oh,
All right.
now it's clicked on and said we're live. There we go. That way everyone's streaming at the same pace. So not to be like throw it. I don't have flags to throw, I guess. So it's
Right.
not really like a penalty, just like, ooh, a moment. So
Right.
okay, sorry.
So the people on
Now we're
LinkedIn,
on a spot where
right?
everyone can be able to see us.
Yes, yes. So if you're on YouTube, you saw a little bit of our beginning. If you're on LinkedIn,
Welcome.
you're just a few seconds. A few seconds in.
Technical challenges this morning, and that's okay. We're
It
still
is.
all here and we're glad you're with us too.
We are. Well, you know what? I was talking about Wednesdays and the fact that this is a great reset day, and just mentally, right? Because it's the middle of the week. So even as technology messes up, right? It's a good time to take a deep breath, right, and move forward
And reset.
and reset and reset.
Right. Sometimes that's exactly what's needed.
It is. It is. Definitely,
Mhm.
I feel like that for myself this week.
Yeah, I'm curious. Anybody joining us? Do you ever have those moments, or like what tells you when you need a reset?
Ooh, yeah.
Like, what do you notice?
Yeah.
And T, it's funny since we were talking about it, and you're like, I need a reset. And I'm like, yep. Like the first couple days, I was kind of booking, going through, doing things. And then this morning, for whatever reason, like even my head, I'm like, I think I need another cup of coffee. Like I can tell things are just like not quite like I'm not on the roll right now. And that's okay. I just need a
That's
quick
okay.
reset.
Yeah. Well, one thing, honestly, that I've learned from you and working with you and being at Catalyst is that it's your body telling you something, right?
Right.
So I really try to listen to my body instead of trying to push it through, to say, okay, what is your body telling? Your body's telling you you need to take a break, or your
Mhm.
body's telling you that you need to play more, which is what I talk, what was talked about in the community. Your body's telling you something,
Yeah.
like listen to it. That's something that honestly I've taken away from you. And I mean, I talk about, I get headaches and migraines, and so I'm like, oh, I have a headache today, and like you reminding me, what is your body telling you, right?
Well, right, we get signs all the time,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's about how we're feeling or things around us. But
Yeah.
so often we're just like looking, we're heads down,
Mm-hmm.
doing the checklist, trying to get all the things done. And so, that's the whole heart, I think, about why we even coach.
Yeah.
Because when we think about how do we help make things easier, it's about looking up. It's about noticing. It's observing whether it's ourselves or others
Yeah.
because that's telling us what we need in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
We'll never
Yeah.
get to the moment tomorrow or next week if we can't take care of what we need right now.
Absolutely.
So, can we be
Absolutely.
present right here to know what we need in this moment?
Yes, and it's needed, right?
Mhm.
Because if you don't, and we've been there, right? Where if you don't take the time to do that work on yourself, or to give yourself a break, or whatever it is, once you get to the moment, it's not really the best it could be, because you're tired, you're burnt out,
Yeah.
you didn't prep as well as you should have, or whatever it is. And it's because you felt like you had to keep going, versus like, how do I take some time to reflect,
Mhm.
right, on what I've been doing, what's working, what's not working, right? Like, how do I need to approach it differently? Um, what is my body just telling me? Sometimes it's to sit, right? To sit down and stop working your brain so much. And that might be
Mhm.
needed, right, for a
Mhm.
day. so that you can move forward and be the best version of yourself going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we just don't think about that enough.
No. And you know what? I think that's actually a really great like segue into what we're talking about today,
Mm-hmm.
which is operationalizing leadership.
Yeah. Yes.
And part of it is because when we think about how we do leadership and how we practice the skills of taking care of people, of leading, communicating, influence, like, right, put the grocery list in there.
Yeah.
The best way to do that is by pausing to see what's happening around us,
Mm-hmm.
to understand, I tried this, and now what am I observing? What do I notice? What do others see?
Yes. Yes.
And so often we get people who call us on a regular basis and email us about like, how do we do food safety culture?
Mm-hmm.
And that's because what we find is we are very checklist driven. Like I'm doing the checklist on GFSI requirements or,
Mm-hmm.
some toolkit or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And really, when we think about doing it, we have to sit back and see like, what's actually happening out here?
Right. Yeah.
For me to do food safety culture means I need to pause and be with people and observe people and put people first.
Exactly. And take that in, right? And then make a decision versus like, oh, we're supposed to do this. If it was so easy to do culture from a checklist, right? We would be rocking and rolling, right? In all industries, right?
Good point.
We have checklists and structure.
Everywhere.
And all those things are great, right? And they are helpful. The problem is that we can't just lean on those things, right? We have to be, like you said, with the people, observing, noticing, reflecting, practicing, getting feedback, and all those things that we talk about all the time here at Catalyst, because that's really how you do culture, right? That's how you do food safety culture. That's really how you start to see changes within your culture.
Mm-hmm. So if you're new to Catalyst and this is the first time you're joining us, welcome. We're so happy to have you here with us. Here at Catalyst, T and I, we are on a mission to transform how we lead in food because of the things we've just talked about. Too often we're worried about the checklist, the KPIs, the like getting product out the door, whatever those things are. And those things are important, but nothing replaces putting people as a priority.
Yes.
And when we think about transforming how we lead, we have to put people first to get the culture that we want, to have the business outcomes we need.
Yes.
So that's what we do here at Catalyst. We help people have better outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Let me tell this story real quick. I was talking to a consultant yesterday, and we're in the same circles, but we haven't officially met. And so we connected, and I was asking her about her background. And I asked her, why did she go into consulting? And the first thing that she said was, I've had so many terrible bosses that I just didn't want to do it anymore. I had been consulting on the side. And after my last boss, I really just needed to do my own thing. And the more we talked, the more we had conversations, even as she's talking about clients going into a facility, and she's like, I can feel the vibes of the culture when I walk in.
Yeah.
And during this conversation, and I hadn't thought about it till right now, nothing that she said had anything to do with their food safety programs are falling apart, right? The leadership is great, but food safety programs are falling apart. It was always the reverse, right? It started with the leadership there. And then that kind of flowed into the issues that they were seeing around people. And so, that just stood out to me because it's like, if she's a brilliant mind, right? And we're lucky to have her in the industry, being able to touch so many different organizations. The organizations that want her there, though, she's unwilling to do that because of her experience with leadership. And so it's like, if we just had better leaders, right, we will be able to retain our people. We'll be able to have them be more engaged in the work that we're doing. We'll be able to, like you said, have better business outcomes. And that's only focusing on leadership.
And it's so important because I don't know about you, but I didn't wake up this morning and think, I just want to be fine today.
Right.
I just hope today is good enough.
Right.
That's not how I start the day.
Yeah.
I start the day with like, I can't wait for what we're doing, for what comes next, for who I get to, what we get to work on and who we get to work with. And I know every day, like I said, today I woke up and I was kind of like, something's not quite the same today. But never at any point did I think, I just want to be fine. I hope things are fine today.
Right.
I hope things are going to be good enough to get through it.
Yes.
And I think about how many people we interact with where that is not just today, that's every day.
Yeah.
That's every week as they think about where they're at and how they feel stuck in a role.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they enjoy the people around them and there are moments of good, it's still just fine.
Yeah. Yeah. They're just like, I'm just going to get through the day.
Yes, there is more. And it is okay to want more.
Yes. Yes.
We at our core are meant to be like joyous, happy, loving, kind beings.
Mm-hmm. We are.
That is our natural state.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're not there, right, we want to get there, right? Like our bodies are pulling us towards how do we be in this natural state of being happy and content and loving and caring and sharing with others around us.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be the reason why you're here today listening, right, to Real Talk on like how do I get that in my work?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I think at the high level, right, that's what leadership is supposed to be about.
yes.
And at some point, whether it was like our industrial age or whenever it was, right, things got put into like leadership are managers that are controlling, command, and doers. We've all kind of navigated through that report where Mercer talks about how employee needs have changed, how leadership has changed, but our systems were built upon those approaches.
Yes.
And so they weave into so much of what we see in our workplaces today. So when people come to us and say, well, how do we do food safety culture different? The first thing that we always talk about is you have to stop using the same tools you're using today.
Yes.
It doesn't mean all of them, right? Some have been really great to get you where you are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you really have to think about out of the box. You have to get out of this box of where you're leading and living today.
Yes.
To actually get something different.
Absolutely. Someone said to us when we were at IFP, and I love it, it stuck with me, where like we're trying to use food science for people science, right? We're trying to use the tools that we're so used to that actually works when it comes to processes, but it's not working when it comes to people, right? And we know why. We know why, right? Because people are different. Human behavior is different. It's a different type of science. So even when people talk about like, oh, to do food safety culture, right, you just need these problem solving tools, or you just need this risk assessment, or you just need this insert technical tool, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's like, I'm sure it will give you some information, but when you're talking about people, you need to understand your people, right? Yeah. You need to be in tune with your people.
And that all starts with mindset.
Yes.
Like you have to think actually differently to move to a different space. And we don't mean just like, oh, wow, like sugar is good. And like, oh, sugar alternatives are good. Like, right. That's kind of almost a different mindset. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's kind of what we're asking for here. But instead of like, oh, I lead people like X, Y, and Z, like, no, I get to lead people like A, B, and C now.
Yeah.
Like we still have to shift out of what we're doing to think about how leadership will be different.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so why is this important that we're talking about this today? And mainly it's because operationalizing your leadership and your change culture is the hardest step in the process, right? Like many of us, even if we haven't talked about it with our team, like we might be able to visualize or even be able to write with words or have pictures on like what kind of culture do I want to be in, right? Or what type of leader do I want to be? What are some examples, right? Even pulling those together, putting together this strategy of like, okay, I need to do these things of changing my mindset, right? Finding new tools. We talked about like reflecting and practicing. Okay, I need to do that. boom, 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 right? Now you come to the step of you actually need to do it, right? Like I actually need to get new tools in my toolbox and use them, right?
Yeah.
And use them. This is the hard operationalizing. That is the hardest part. And that's typically when people stop.
Yeah. And I think one thing that you and I talk about a lot is, there's kind of this shift. It's about learning new skills. Yes. Like I can identify and understand a new skill. But really, we need to take that skill and we need it to increase the capability that we have in the workplace. That's really what it's meant to do. It's not just to be like, oh, I have the skill. Like, oh, I can influence better.
Right.
Like I understand what influencing is. But until I practice that and make it part of what I do and like actually increase my own personal capability to do that, like it's just a skill hanging out over here.
Right, exactly. It's almost like this awareness, right? Like I'm aware that I need to be more inspirational when I influence, right? And maybe I've heard of examples, but if I'm not actually doing it, practicing it, reflecting on it, failing at it, right? That's a part of it of, oh, this worked well here. It did not work well here. What's the difference, right? What's the difference between the two groups? How would I have known? What information do I need to collect before I try to influence? All of those pieces, right? It's really a higher level of thinking and building those capabilities like what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's different, right? So, I mean, if we think about it from, let's say, running, like if I'm like, oh, I have a skill, I can run. Like, yeah, I can run down my driveway to get to the mailbox. Woo! But now if I want to do something different, like I want to run a 5K or a marathon, like that skill of running isn't going to carry me through to a different capability that I'm trying to reach.
Right.
Like I have to do things differently. And that is the same thing when we talk about human skills. We can't just say, I've got this skill and I use it like this one-dimensional space. That may work for where you're at. But the reason we're here today is to talk about like going beyond where we're at.
Yes.
And that means either moving, like you said, to the next level of that skill, or what are the other skills that are still maybe back here in the bank that need to come out and for us to really start letting them shine.
There's such a great example around the running because you're right, like where it's like, okay, I can run to the mailbox and back. I can run a 5K. I can run a half marathon, right? And for people who run marathons, right, they have done this progressive build. And I love too the way that you talk about like even additional skills that you need along the way that you maybe didn't need when you were running to the mailbox.
Right. Like I need refueling capabilities. I need to think about different, like my shoes a little differently, probably.
Yes.
What I'm wearing.
Recovery period is different. Right. So it's like, as a leader, right, what you need today is going to be very different than what you're going to need 10 years down in your career. Right. Or even 5 years or 3 years, depending on how quickly you're moving or even how quickly your group is changing. With our retention, numbers that we have, your group is probably changing a lot. Right. So those skills need to keep up with the different people that are coming in and out of your teams.
They do. And you've all heard us talk about this before. Harvard Business Review had published data that 70% of employees have not mastered the skills they need for their jobs today. And part of it is we're still asking them to run to the, like we're asking them to run to the marathon, but we've only asked them to run to the mailbox.
Right.
And so how do we really help people build the skills that they need, not just for their job today, because we know skills are changing that are needed as we go forward. And we've got to start really thinking about what that looks like, because for us to operationalize leadership and culture to move it differently, we have to really think and lean into how we're building skills differently.
Okay. I thought I was going to sneeze. So I'm like, oh, sneeze.
Well, and I think so I'll start with I think one of the challenges that we run into very often, and I've had this, is my HR team, love that they want to help us build skills, but they give us one class that's training. I'm going to train you on how to do difficult conversations. That is
That's not enough.
information only. It's only
Right.
helping me understand that there are perhaps other ways to do it, but it doesn't help me practice it.
Mm-hmm. I think this is an important part of operationalizing leadership is understanding this training component, where a lot of times, and again, it's one of the reasons why when people are trying to operationalize leadership culture, right, it ends because we think that training is enough.
Yeah.
And there's different parts of training, right? If you have a comprehensive training program, then you're not just doing in the classroom type training, right? You're also doing on the job training. You're also doing these other assets of it, aspects of training, which is awesome, right? There's a place for that and it's needed.
Mm-hmm.
But just doing the training, even a comprehensive training program, is not enough to actually build capabilities. You have to keep going, right? Like you have to, it's not enough for me to learn about running, right, in a classroom setting. It's not enough for me to run a 5K one day, right, and have someone say, yes, you completed the 5K this one day. Do you have any questions? Nope. I think I can do it again. And then I never do it again, right, until it's time for me to actually run the 5K a year later. And right, like I don't
Now
get my
you're not
grind.
necessarily ready.
Right, exactly. My legs are falling apart. Like literally the first time I ran a 5K, I just decided to run one and I didn't do any prep work for it. And like that felt very different than the times that I ran 5Ks when I actually did do the prep work and had the skill beyond just the training portion of it.
Yeah. Which is so important because companies spend, and I don't have the number in front of me, but it is like $3 billion a year on training.
Oh, yes.
And most of that value goes unrealized
Mm-hmm.
because training falls prey to the forgetting curve, right?
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I get that information, within like 2 days, I've forgotten 90% of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so once again, when we are trying to operationalize leadership and culture to get different outcomes, training alone is not going to get you there.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
we really have to think about what are the things that we need to do to support, once again, people, putting people as a priority to really get the ROI out of those programs.
Mm-hmm.
And years ago, MIT reported that there's a 250% return on an 8-month long soft skill training program.
Whew.
And
Every
here's the
time I
thing.
hear that stat, I'm like, wait, what? Right?
I mean, that's huge.
Yes.
Most people, if that was equipment, they'd be like, sign me up for 10 of them.
Right.
Like, I get that much money back. And yet it's hard for us to think about this, what they feel is this intangibleness of leadership skills, when really what it's demonstrating is it takes a longer time period of always coming back to these skills to get the ROI.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because it takes time for people to change.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's one of the things, I think we talked about this, you know, in the beginning. At some point we had a conversation around how do people change and how to change behaviors. And there's this misconception that you can change your behavior in 7 days or 21 days or
30 days.
Right. Exactly. Insert popular book title. Right. That's where it comes from. It comes
True.
from book titles that have become extremely popular that makes it seem like we can actually change our behaviors in a very short period of time. But in reality, it takes over a year for you to change a behavior. Mm-hmm. And it's not because you just sat through a training, right? And you did an on-the-job verification check and that's it. It's because you're constantly reflecting, practicing, resetting, having conversation, right? That's something that we talk about a lot at Catalyst because we do a lot of group sessions. We do a lot of community work because mm-hmm. that's a part of fighting against that forgetting curve, right? Mm-hmm. And really stepping into how do I embody this new leadership, this new mindset that I'm trying to become as a leader. And you have to continuously do that, right? And I love that MIT quote around the ROI over 8 months, because you have to continuously do this and focus on it and work on it. You have to be intentional about it, right? Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you find yourself back at step one.
Yeah. And, you know, and I think that really plays into different learning styles. Mm-hmm. If I go to training, typically I get talked at, like auditory.
Yeah.
Maybe I have some visual aids. I get some information, but I need to do to be
Right.
able to actually learn and actually almost, like we some use the term like embody it. Like I have to do it
Mm-hmm.
multiple times in a row for it to become part of just what I do. And you all know this. Anyone out there listening, like we all know that these are the things that we have to do. And I think the question is why don't we carry this through in work settings?
Mm. Yeah. I'm
When
curious
we
if,
already have this and we already know the information, like what keeps us, what prevents us from actually being able to get to that next step and the realization of these skills and these abilities that we have to be able to share with others.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm curious, like, as you're listening, like, add in the comments, like, what do you think prevents people, right, from taking this time to invest in themselves? Really, ultimately, it's the investment in themselves, investment in their people, right, leadership, to make sure that they are, um, building these capabilities.
Mm-hmm. It is. And I think, just recently in QA magazine, we wrote the cover story about leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always what we think it is. So one of the top things was that people don't feel that they have the time, that they're not provided the time to be able to do leadership development.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we hear it, right? We hear that too as a part of our organization. And one thing that's really interesting is that even as we talk to leaders, even the leaders saying, "Oh, I don't know if Jill has time."
Yeah.
Right. And so this is something, you and I, of course, we talk about this often because it's obviously a part of our business. But this whole concept of, do I have the time? Does my team have the time for this development that ultimately they need?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's
Right.
like we want our teams to run a marathon, but we don't give them the skills. And then every year, right, we talk to them about why we fell short of the marathon goals. And I'm putting it all on you, when in reality, I haven't really given you the skills to even run that marathon, right?
Yeah.
And then recover and run another one, right? It reminds me of the Olympics, right? Those people are running all the time for like 9 days straight. They're running, right? And Theo and I, we're like, how is this even possible, right? That these people are running 5Ks, 10Ks, marathons, and winning, right? But they have the skills to do it, right? They have built this capability over
Yes.
time. They've actually put in the time to do it. So when it's time to actually operationalize what they've been working towards, it seems easy, right? It looks almost flawless to someone that does not have the skill, right? It looks flawless and the job is done because they have the skills. Versus
Yeah.
like every year we haven't met our goals, right? We still don't have the culture we want to see. We still don't have the leaders we want to see, but we can't put aside an hour of reflection time,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Of practice.
Of practice. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the part that, that we hope you walk away with today. I know we still have plenty of the show left, but like this is the mindset part. Like nothing will change till our mindset changes. For us to go, well, am I willing to spend 15 minutes a week? Am I willing to spend 30 minutes a week? How important is it to me? Right? We still own our actions related to this and how we do it. And so even if our leader says, I don't know if you have the time, how important is it for you to be able to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Do we need their permission to be a better person and to do what we need and want to do?
Yeah. I think that's a really great point, because many of us find ourselves in situations where we do have our leaders saying, oh, Tia doesn't have the time, or Tia should focus here, when really I need to be a better leader in order to get my job done.
Mm-hmm.
But I also need to advocate, right, for myself and prioritize that time. And for you to say, well, I've already been setting aside an hour to do this reflection, and this is how it's been impactful. I want more skills, right, to be able to reflect on and practice. So I'm willing to do that so that I can get my work done, my goals accomplished. right? That's very different, to have that type of conversation versus having your leader lead those conversations for you.
Yeah, being an advocate. And that is so important because just last week, I was talking with a leader who was talking about someone on their team, and they're like, I know they need development. Like for them to be ready in this bigger plan that we have for succession, like they need development. And I said, cool, what are you doing about it? They're like, silence.
Yeah.
Wait, as a leader, we've identified gaps and opportunities for team members, but yet we haven't, one, talked to our team member about what those are, and
Mhm.
two, we don't have any idea how we're going to fill those or commitment to do that.
Right.
And I think that's a really great place to show your power as a leader. And I don't mean power over, I mean power with your team
Yes.
members. Like, this is the perfect place to be able to say, hey, let's do this together.
Yes.
Like, you don't have to do this alone. And I want you to be ready. Of course,
Mhm.
maybe the real thing was that there's some backstory, and maybe they don't really want this person to be ready for that
Right.
next step in their plan. I doubt it, because I think, most people have good in their heart.
Mhm.
Um, but that has to be coupled with intentional action. And
Yes.
that's what operationalizing leadership is about. It's about being
Mhm.
intentional in how we're continuing through our day to take care of people every day, every day.
Yes. When I think about the, great leaders that I feel like were great leaders to me, a piece of that is that they've done exactly what you said, right? Like they just don't identify possible gaps that I have or ways that things I need to work on, right, to be a better leader, a better, team member. But they also provide me with opportunities. Either that or they allow me, right, to find opportunities
Yeah.
in order for me to practice those skills and gain that capability over time. And I hadn't really thought about it until you were just talking, to say, wow, that is something that actually set those leaders apart, is that
Mhm.
they actually supported me in finding ways to close gaps. And I use close gaps loosely because a lot of people think about like gaps in order to do your job. But sometimes it's like, man, I want to be a better communicator. And no one has said, oh, well, you're a terrible communicator, right? It's stopping you from being promoted, or, all the things we want to happen in our career. But like, I've noticed that I want to be better at it. Right. Because for whatever reason at this time, this is a real example. At this time, I felt like I wasn't being clear and concise in my message. And so I wanted to get better at that. That's me identifying my own thing, right? But the fact that I had leaders around me that was like, yeah, if that's what you want to focus on, go for it, right? And like, and what's interesting is that it's not another training, right? It's actually putting me in situations that I can practice. It's actually setting aside
Accountability.
time so that I can reflect on those things. It's not, I need to sit down and take another communication course. I'm aware, right, of these communication skills, right? I'm aware of techniques. Now I just need to practice, right? I need to be put in situations that I can practice and engage with other people who do it well.
Yeah. And I think the other part with that for people to think about is how you create space to practice and reflect.
Yes.
There's a reason why sports teams, orchestras, everybody has practice.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we are left to do it on our own time, there's a very small percent of the population that's actually going to go do that individual practice. Doesn't mean you won't, but we come together and practice for a variety of reasons. And part of it's the community around us
Mm-hmm.
that supports us through this process. And one of the things that we hear a lot from clients is like, wow, when I have done some of this type of work before, like, we don't have magical concepts when it comes to leadership. Our coaching part is magical.
It is.
They're not new concepts, right? Like, if we want to talk about like how you influence better, but what we do is create space and community. So you get to actually be held, like, you have a group that's like your accountability buddies.
Yeah.
And is asking, last week you said you were going to be doing this. How did that turn out?
Mm-hmm.
What did you notice?
Yes.
It takes a group. It's the community and everybody being invested in each other's success that helps people move forward.
Yes.
If you're the one out there on the lone island doing it, by
Yeah.
yourself, it's easier to be like, wow, I need to go approve some more documents, or I've got these customer comments piling up, or I need to get that presentation ready for next week. And then that falls to the wayside.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. It's easy to do that. But with that accountability partner, right? Someone's going to ask you, how did you practice this week?
Yeah.
Right. And help you reflect. One other thing that we've done a great job, obviously I'm a part of this program, so I'm a little biased. But one thing that we incorporate into our programs that I think is extremely important when it comes to operationalizing is helping to recognize when you can practice these concepts, even within your daily work. Right.
Mm.
A lot of people think about, okay, I need to remove myself from my day to day and practice somewhere. Well, no, you don't have to, right?
Mhm.
Like we want you to do these leadership skills with your team. So practice with your team, right? And so understanding like when you can practice, right? What makes sense to practice, and then being able to reflect. That's the type of capabilities you're building with programs like Catalyst. Because now what people say, right, and what people end up with at the end of our programs is that they're able to identify, oh yeah, I practiced this communication when I gave a presentation to senior leadership. This is what worked well. Didn't work well. I don't really know what path to go down. What does the group think? Right? Like it's those type of things where that's helping you build those capabilities. And we even have people say, like, I actually practiced this with my kids. Right? This worked well. This did not work well. Right? I think I'm going to try it a little bit differently next time. That person is building capabilities, right? They're actually in the process of operationalizing their leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think about some of the things that we've just talked about, like to operationalize leadership, right? It's first, we have to be on the same page of like, what does this skill mean or look like?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's about being committed to practicing it and having a group to do that. But it's also about being committed for reflecting on your practice.
Yeah. Yes.
And so there's this cycle of how we operationalize. And this is part of what we hope you take away today, is that too often the focus is just on learning the skill, the training, and the rest of the cycle gets cut off.
Yeah.
You think about when you do kappa or problem solving. If you just did the first step, you would get nowhere. You would never finish kappas. You would never get to the end of problem solving.
Right. Yeah.
And you all know too that I'm guilty of this. There's kappas. I'm like, we just need to get this done. Like
Right.
It is not going to be our finest hour. It is not going to be our best work, but it needs to be closed.
Mm-hmm.
And we're still going to work on it at some point, but today it's not the priority. Yep, that's real. And if you're out there going, oh my gosh, then welcome to the world of food.
Right.
The same thing happens though when you practice leadership. If there may be days where you're like, I'm practicing, but my heart's not in it, or it's not as good as it needs to be. Those are days we have.
Yeah.
But it's, will you keep coming back to practice and showing up with the intent of getting to the next level?
Right.
Of learning the next thing, of showing up to be able to do it more proficiently.
Yes. Yes. And that is important, not just for ourselves, but our teams. Mm-hmm. Right? Like as we're building these capabilities in ourselves and the skill and giving ourselves grace, right? To say that today, right, we need to close this kappa, right? Like in giving ourselves grace in that moment helps us give our team grace when they feel that way, right? When they feel like, man, I just need a break today, right? I need to take a half day, right? I have a doctor's appointment or I have something going on. I need to take a half day to do it. Well, you've already been practicing, reflecting, becoming a better leader. You understand that a little bit better because you have actually been there with yourself. You've taken the time to do that. So that makes you a better leader for that person that's also, right, in a situation. And in turn, hopefully, right, they have now seen a different way. And hopefully they are treating their people differently. Mm-hmm. And that's when, Joe, when you talk about our mission of transforming leaders, like that's our goal, right? That's our goal, to be able to build these capabilities in leaders so that they can share with others and build capabilities in other leaders, right?
Mhm.
It's this effect. It's this effect of like, man, I
Yeah.
had a great boss and I want to be a great boss, versus the alternative of, I've had a terrible boss and I don't even want to be in that environment anymore.
Yeah. And I think that's the part when people come to us and they're like, well, we need to get started. Okay. So, right. One thing, having an external partner is a fantastic way to take the burden off yourself or others in your organization to have to figure this out.
Yeah.
You already have a big plate of responsibilities that you're doing. And, if you liken it to, since we just had the Olympics, every single one of those athletes has a team of coaches.
Yes.
They have a team of coaches, not just one, but a team to help them excel in all of these areas.
Yes.
So when you think about working with an external partner, it's not because you can't do it. Like, those Olympic athletes already have the magic, the shine, the skill, the mindset to be there. They're working on the next level, and that's where the coaches help them get past any of those barriers.
And if you talk to any athlete, they will tell you the same thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
They will tell you the exact same thing. They need their coaches in order to get to the next level.
Yeah, and this is what we see with the difference with, people that we talk to versus clients we work with. The clients we work with are the ones that are like, yes, you know what? This is a space that I don't have enough time to give my full attention. I need some support. Yes, I'm smart enough to figure it out, but having a partner makes it easier and we can move faster together.
Yeah.
And so by doing that, then we help with the information you have and putting that plan together and putting the program together and help administer it and create the curriculum and do all of those things so that you can stay focused on your core business versus having to shift away and develop curriculum.
Right,
That's
exactly.
what we're here to do. We're here to help with with the coaching. We're here to help make life easier.
Yeah. Yeah. When you give the example of you talking to someone and they've identified someone that they need, right, to develop skills and the capability in order to be a part of their succession plan, but they're not doing anything about it. Many times is because I don't have the time, right, to develop something, or I have no idea even where to start. That's where an external partner can help you.
It
Right.
does. And it doesn't mean that we're tied together forever.
Right. Right.
There are times things ebb and flow.
Mm-hmm.
Right. As your teams are building capabilities and you're building leadership capabilities, collectively, everyone is moving to a spot where this new culture is helping sustain where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you're ready, if as you want to move to the next thing, because we're always on this continuous improvement journey, like what does that look like for the next part?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's something to think about as you are thinking about operationalizing, right? Your own leadership and your culture on how do I get past this this delay on start because I don't have the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I feel like I don't have the resources or whatever it happens to be, right? Like you and your team still needs that development, right? The business is going to continue to move forward. Goals are going to continue to be created and your plate is going to continue to get full, right?
Yeah.
Like that's all a part of it. But having this external partner allows you to still accomplish those things, honestly, better because you now have more skills and more capabilities to get your job done. And you see, right, like we've been there ourselves is the reason why we created Catalyst, but even people that we talk to that's been through our programs of the fact that my mindset has shifted and I now have these different capabilities, my job has gotten a lot easier. Where I felt like I was overwhelmed because I had so much on my plate. Now I'm able to influence my workload in a different way because now I show up differently. I'm able to empower people differently, right? I realized I was trying to keep everything on my plate when people were actually asking for things to be taken off my plate. Well, now I have the skills and the capability, right, to be able to empower others to get work done.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a real impact to our day to day. And when we show up and say, okay, I don't want to just be fine, I want to have a great day, that's a part of it, right? And making sure that we are better leaders in our space and helping our people and being people-centric.
Yeah. So when I think about, how do we go beyond training? Because that's always the first knee-jerk reaction. Oh, let's just have training on food safety culture. Oh, let's just do a food safety culture, workshop and then do nothing else.
Right.
Then that's what you get.
That's what you get. Yeah.
Then that's what you get.
Mm-hmm.
And so, our challenge to you is really to think about how are you putting intention behind true capability building for yourself and for your team.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking culture. So it's human-centric leadership, human-centric skills.
Yes.
Those are the capabilities that when we talk about operationalizing leadership, that's the focus.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Elsa.
If any of you follow me, you probably just saw on LinkedIn that when we think about capability building and being human-centric, it's not that I'm like promoting Starbucks, but Starbucks had this fantastic job description for a leader. So many times I see job descriptions for even VPs of food safety and quality that are responsible for food safety, HACCP, PCQI, foreign supplier, for supply chain, for logistics, for recall, blah, 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 all these things. And then there's a line item, somewhere buried like number 19 that says, manage a team of 5 people. And what that tells me a lot about the culture at that organization, about how they're setting up roles for people to lead other people.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why the Starbucks role stood out. This job actually started with mentor, engage, empower, develop people. Like most of the list was about taking care of people.
Yeah, that's amazing.
There were only like 2 line items that said something about like supporting or lending expertise.
Yeah, that's so important, right?
Yeah,
like,
but they didn't get there overnight.
Yeah,
they're thinking about how are we building this true capability in our teams to lead people, to be the culture that we want to be. And this is what we see, and I'm assuming, I don't work at Starbucks, but this is a first step to say we're going to do something different.
Yes. It's actually calling out the priorities of leadership, which is the first, take care of your people.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
This is operationalizing it.
Yes.
It's embedded into even the job description and responsibilities.
Yes. And it's being intentional, right? They're intentionally writing that into the job description, and they're intentionally looking for people who have those skills and capabilities, right? In order to do the job, because they realize that is the most important thing for a leader to do.
Yeah. And so if you're listening and if you're from Starbucks or know someone from Starbucks, I'd love to talk to them more about this mindset and this culture. So I would appreciate an introduction.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and it stands out, right? Because we don't see that often.
It does. And once again, we're putting the challenge out there. Like, how are you building true capabilities, within you and your team? But then also, when you have the next opportunity to look at job descriptions, how should they change to really reflect what you should be doing or what others on your team should be doing to support culture, to be the leaders that you need to be?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I love that example. Because it really is a mindset shift.
It is. And the thing is each of us can do it. Like we all have it in us to be like, you know what, we can get to the next level and we can bring people along with us. Sounds cheesy. I know it's a bit cliche, but when we can break free of like the checklist is running my day. Like, how about you run your day?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you'll notice
maybe it starts at just an hour a day. Like I'm going to take an hour a day and run my day. Awesome. Start where you're at.
Yes. And be intentional, right? Like be intentional about setting that time aside. Right. Yeah. We love it because when people finish one of our courses, like boot camp, which starts in September, if you haven't signed up, please do. But I mean, we hear it every single cohort. I still have this time blocked off on my calendar because they have learned, right, that you need this time in order to continue to operationalize, right, your leadership and
Yes.
building those capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean every single week, right, that time is going to be available. We know, right? We even know that during the course. But the fact that you intentionally block that time and think about and reflect on what I've been doing and what I'm going to practice this upcoming week is like, I mean, that's a shift right there.
It is. And it's the difference of when we look at an SOP and we go out and we audit what's happening, we're like, wow, we've actually shifted from what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we have gaps. The same thing happens as leaderships with as leaders with our capability. If we don't focus on them, all of a sudden we may look up and be like, wow, I'm actually further away from empowering people than I was 6 months ago because I haven't focused on it.
Yes.
Wow, I haven't been intentional on building community because I've been really heads down working on this project.
Mm-hmm.
So building that time into your day is once again just about operationalizing leadership.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we run into people who, once they realize, right, like, man, I'm farther behind than I was 6 months ago, or I'm in the exact same spot, our culture is in the exact same spot that it was last year. A lot of times people realize a lot of that when they're in a crisis, right? When we've lost so many people and we realize, well, yeah, because we haven't had any movement at all over the last year or 3 years. Right. We always talk about with culture surveys, right? Culture surveys in their assessment. If you have a poor score on an assessment, it is already too late. Right. Like those people have been thinking that way probably for the last 2 or 3 surveys. It's just now starting to pop up because people are fed up. So it's like once you get into a crisis mode and it's like, wow, you know, our survey results are showing something different, or we're losing people, right? Or I haven't been able to move forward. You realize at that point, you are already behind, right? It doesn't mean you can't start, right? The best day to start is today, right? It doesn't mean you can't start. It's just you're here today, you're talking with us. And we're here to challenge you, right? To be intentional about your development, right? And who you are and how you show up as a leader, because it matters today and it's definitely going to matter in a year, right? It's definitely going to matter in those critical moments that you need your relationships or you need to be able to influence better.
Absolutely. And the one last thing I always like to bring up when we talk about operationalizing leadership, very often people think about, I need my top leaders involved. I need my frontline supervisors making it happen. Yeah. Middle managers are what drive culture.
Yes.
It's middle managers. So every time we like divert funds away from this group, they are the ones that are making things happen, translating, helping with the transitioning, communicating back up and forth, and all of the stuff. They need the help. They have been neglected for way too long.
Absolutely. It's the reason why we are in this position, right? When we talk about culture and when we talk about leadership, and it's because we have not been investing in that core group that's actually driving the culture we see. Right. We spend so much money on development for our top leaders when honestly they should have a lot of those skills and capabilities by the time they get there because of their middle manager role that they had, or roles, right? Multiple roles. So like if you're looking even at your budget and you find that you're spending a lot of money on developing your top leaders, like, think about where you should be spending those funds to think about the future of your organization, right? And the type of leaders that you need.
Bet on everyone.
You know, we put out a lot of challenges today.
I know. I'm like, we got just a couple minutes. We should wrap up. What are the couple things we want people to walk away with today?
Yes. Well, you know, I would say number one is that operationalizing is hard. And that's where people get stuck. Because this is where the work happens. This is where you have to be intentional about your time. This is where you have to practice and fail and practice and fail, right? And reflect along the way. And so I just want to acknowledge, number one, is that it is hard. And in order for you to move past that first step, you have to be intentional about it.
Yeah, you have to cultivate the mindset to be like, I am moving past it.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
another thing, which I'm sure you have one or two in your mind, but I would say the second thing that comes to my mind is really about building skills and building capability.
Yeah.
And this is on your mind, you know,
It
like
is.
it's something when you talk about I want to add these skills to my toolbox versus I want to build these capabilities, right? And embody this leadership. And the fact that that takes time to do. It's not a 30-day process, right? And many times it's a year plus process depending on where you are when you start, right? Do you have this capability, right? Do you have pieces of this capability or not? That determines how long it's going to take. And so I think, again, this comes back to mindset, but having that mindset shift to say, I'm going to be intentional about this over a period of time until I've developed this capability. And then I'm going to think about the next level, right? And I think that's a different mindset that we have traditionally looked at leadership, where we've looked at, I'm just going to take the training and then now I can influence.
Yep.
We're
Or I'm
really
going to do an assessment and now I know things.
and now I know things. No, I want to
Knowing is
embody
not
leadership.
capability.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not the embodiment of what you need. And I think that's a piece of it, is that we challenge you to think about, like, what type of leadership do you want to embody, and think about how do you actually focus on building those capabilities over time.
Yeah. Nope. That one was like top of the list for me. But I think the other one is we often think, oh, I know what to do. I have the skill. I should be able to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Asking for help, asking for what you need and offering what you can is a superpower.
Yes, it really
So
is.
all because you can doesn't mean it has to fall on your plate. And so we really do invite you to think about what could, can you imagine, how can you imagine life would be if you had an external partner?
Mm.
Like, think beyond where you are at today, because what you're trying to grow is bigger than what you have today.
Yes. Yes.
So really start thinking bigger than where you are and what that really looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly, the whole reason Tia and I are here, and of course, we love having you here in this space with us,
Yes.
to hopefully create some new perspective. But it's because we are so passionate about it that this is like our life mission.
Mm-hmm.
Boot camp starts September 12th. And so if you're like, I'm ready to actually do the next step, join us.
Mm-hmm.
Join us. We have people already signed up, of course. And we have some seats left that we want to fill with people who are intentional about where they want to go next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
So if you have questions about it, certainly reach out to us. hello@foodsafetykatalyst.com. Otherwise, sign up today. Save your seat. And in 4 months, in 6 months, you will be further ahead than where you are today.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes. This is conversations like this always get me thinking, right, about the next step, and really how to be intentional about this. So we always appreciate you reaching out to us and sending your feedback, adding your comments to this one, but also sending us your comments. We love hearing from you. So please reach out to us.
Yes. And of course, we're going to be back here, same time, same place next week.
Mm-hmm.
So make it a great week,
yes.
And we will see you then.
All right. See everyone next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.